Hello and welcome back to New Wave Hockey. I'm your host, Link Dansevich, and today we will be talking about the most contested pick in the entire draft. Montreal is selecting at 5th overall, and oh my goodness, is it a contentious pick. All the Montreal fans are blowing up Twitter. It is probably the most talked about pick in the entire draft. I've heard everything from trade rumors to trading up to the 2nd overall pick. I've heard literally everything in the entire book, and I'm here to break down all of it. We will be discussing 9 players who could legitimately be picked at the 5th overall selection. So stay tuned for all of these selections. I'm going to be kind of going over them, how they're going to fit into the Montreal Canadiens system, and what Montreal would need to do for them to fall there. I've been able to grade all of these picks into 3 categories, which is basically you have your risers, the people that are going to be a little bit out of range for Montreal to pick at 5, the people that are going to be the fallers, the people that will probably go in front of 5 if all things stand likely, the people that are just defensemen. I mean, Montreal selected David Reinbacher at 5th overall last year. Are they going to select another defenseman at 5th overall? We'll see. And the 3 most likely. I have 3 players that I've narrowed down to be the most likely picks at 5th overall. So without further ado, let's start off with the risers and fallers. And let's start off with one of the most contentious opinions in the entire draft, Beckett Seneca. Beckett Seneca got a lot of popularity in this OHL season, and even more popularity when a lot of draft scouting agencies thought that he was eligible to go top 5 in the entire draft. Now, it looks like it would be a little bit of a reach. I personally think that he's more of a project. He's someone that won't play in the NHL for 3-4 years. I mean, look what they did to Jesperi Kotkaniemi. They don't want another one of that on their hands, but Beckett Seneca is a fantastic prospect nonetheless. I'm a big fan of his game. Overall, out of 10, I grade Seneca as a 7.3, which is a really good grading for a first-round prospect this year. Some of the notes I have for him is that he's super toolsy. He's got some of the best hands in the draft, as I outlined in my stick handling video. He needs to be more comfortable with his size. He grew a lot between last season and this season, and he's still trying to be more comfortable in his own skin. But one of the key things that I saw about Seneca in the OHL playoffs is that this guy is a gamer. He will do whatever it takes for his team to win. They might have got swept, but I have never seen a player work harder in a sweep than Beckett Seneca has versus the London Knights. He was a fantastic player. He was doing everything that in his power to try to get the Oshawa Generals over the top. It was in vain, but again, the effort's not lost on me, and it shouldn't have been lost on anybody. He may be completely out of range for the 5th overall pick, but he's still a fantastic option for the Montreal Canadiens to consider. My second riser in the entire draft, someone that I still think is just a little bit out of range for the Canadiens to select, Cole Yzerman, the American goal-scoring winger, is just a fantastic option for the Canadiens. They need more offense. They could totally use a goal scorer, and Yzerman has that in bunches. There are a bunch of flaws to Yzerman's game, but you cannot deny that he's the best goal scorer that the draft has seen in a couple of years. He is just absolutely fantastic, could be a top-line sniper for this team. Underrated hands, underrated passing, and underrated physicality. He just needs to gain the sense to get better at his game. He's going to BU next year, and his development all depends on his will. In my opinion, I think he has one of the highest upsides in the entire draft, and he may even slide into my top 10 in my final rankings. He has a lot of potential, and I'm really high on Cole Yzerman. And even though he's a little bit out of range for the 5th overall pick, I still think he's a good option for Montreal to consider. Now moving on to people that I think will not be able to fall to 5th overall. These are guys that I think are ranked too highly to be selected at the 5th overall pick. It would kind of be too much of a steal, like a Matvei Michkov-esque type of circumstances that would happen in front of these picks. And the first one that I want to talk about is Artem Levshunov, who is pretty much the consensus first defenseman in this entire draft. Most boards will have him as the number 1 defenseman, and I can see why. He's a really tall, fast-skating, right-handed defenseman, and if I just stopped right there, you would already be intrigued. I mean, every team is looking for a right shot who is big, can move people out of the way, and can skate. But Artem Levshunov, he did it at a super high level. He was in the NCAA last year. He was playing against full-grown men, and he fared pretty well offensively. Not as good as other defensemen, and again, he's not my top-ranked defenseman, but I think his high upside style of play is going to translate very well for any team. If Montreal has the fortune of grabbing him at 5, they should absolutely run up to that podium because he's going to be an incredible defenseman for them, which, again, say what you will, you selected Reinbacher last season, but a right shot defenseman who has two-way potential, could score 60 points to the next level consistently. That's something that I wouldn't want to pass on. So Levshunov, if they're fortunate to land Levshunov at 5, absolutely select him at 5. Next, I have the consensus number 2 overall pick, or so I thought, Ivan Demidov. He's number 2 on my board, and that's never going to change, but there are some circumstances that I've seen in the draft that might have him falling all the way to 7. Ivan Demidov is a tremendous talent, and there is a bit of a question whether or not his contract will let him go next season, but it isn't a Matvei Michkov situation. It would only be for one singular season. There are questions that of even Macklin Celebrini returning. There are questions of any draft pick drafted this year going to the NHL next year. So I don't think it's a huge issue to take him 2nd overall, but there's a possibility that Chicago selects a D-man, Anaheim selects a D-man, Columbus doesn't select him, and then he falls all the way to Montreal. This would be a crazy, earth-shattering fall to the Montreal Canadiens, where they would totally be the kings of the draft. They would not look back, and he would be the amazing playmaking winger that they've been looking for all their years. So if they're able to land him, that's good for them. I don't really see it happening. It's a crazy amount of circumstances to let it even happen. If they trade up, they may be able to get him, but I don't think he should be a major priority on their list. It's kind of a if he falls type of scenario. Now moving on to people that I think are in range of the Montreal Canadiens. They aren't really risers or fallers. They're totally in range to be selected at 5th overall, but they're defensemen, and they kind of are suffering from the thing that they picked this defenseman last year that's very high. Let's see what else is available. That starts with Sam Dickinson of the London Knights. He's a fantastic player. He's fallen a little bit. He's going to be just outside of my top 10 in my June rankings, but he's still a very steady two-way defenseman that, with development, could develop into a guy that patrols your blue line for 16, 17 years guaranteed. I think the longevity with this pick is very, very coveted. And if you need some stability on your blue line, why not take him? I would certainly consider it over a couple of things because he's a very mature prospect that I certainly believe in. He has the offensive tools. He has skating tools as well. He does have a tendency to make poor decisions and lose the puck sometimes. But those are all coachable abilities. Those are all something that can be taught and just molded around. I think Sam Dickinson is a very safe pick for Montreal. Now moving on to my number 1 defenseman in the entire draft, Zeev Buium out of Denver University. He had a fantastic freshman season in the NCAA, and he just did it with such poise and confidence. He is the smartest player in the entire draft, and I will never back away from saying that. I think Montreal could 100% benefit from that style of play. Yes, they do have a guy like Lane Hutson, but he does have some defensive drawbacks. Zeev Buium is a guy who thinks the game like Lane Hutson, who could be a power play quarterback like Lane Hutson, but he's defensively reliable. He's built like a linebacker. He does not shy away from physicality, and I think he's just overall a smarter player and makes better decisions than Lane as a whole. Zeev Buium is a very special defenseman. Do I see him doing well in Montreal? That's not really the point, but do I think that he's going to advance their offense as a defenseman? Heck yeah. Zeev Buium is a really smart pick for any team. I think Montreal should at least consider him at 5th overall. Now we're getting into the most important picks. There are 3 players overall that I think fit the Montreal Canadiens the absolute best. And that's Berkeley Catton, TJ Ignhla, and Caden Lindstrom. Let's start with the Hall of Famer's son, TJ Ignhla out of Kelowna. He is just like their mascot in Kelowna. He is a absolute rocket. He is a two-way sniper. His goal scoring ability is fantastically pure. He can dangle to create chances in front of the net. He can beat a goalie one-on-one with his shot or with his hands. Or if he's really in a bind, he can pass it off. He's got a great vision, and he's 100% a top 10 player on my list. I don't see him falling outside of the top 10, and if the Montreal Canadiens don't get him at 5, someone will get him very soon after. I think that he is just an explosion of offense, and he has the defensive reliability to boot. He's not as physical as his father. I wouldn't say that he's a power forward. I would think he's more creative on offense, but you see the styles. They're very similar to each other. He is just a very great player generating offense, which, again, Montreal, you need that sort of thing. He is listed as a center going into the draft. He's going to be more of a wing, but it never hurts to have a wing who can take faceoffs. Look at Vancouver with JT Miller. I think my player comp for TJ Ignhla is going to be Wyatt Johnston because he's going to be incredible in the playoffs someday. TJ Ignhla is definitely one of the most coveted options for Montreal Canadiens fans at 5th overall. Next up, Berkeley Catton. I had Montreal taking Berkeley Catton at 5th overall in my post-lottery mock draft, and I'm not going to lie, it still could happen. 116 points in the WHL is nothing to scoff at. This guy can score, and he can score off the rush. He's got a great skating ability. He's got great hands. His shot could use a little bit of work, but it's not bad. What really drives me, though, is passing ability. I absolutely love his passing ability. One thing that irks me, he doesn't have the compete that you need at the next level. He needs to develop a work ethic and an effort to his game that just isn't there. I've seen him give up on too many plays. I've seen him just lackadaisically float around the ice. That's something that needs to be fixed. But Catton going to Montreal is a bit of a project, but it's something that could absolutely turn out into gold for them down the line. I'm seeing Braden Point comparisons with him. I kind of disagree. I have him slotted in with guys like Matt Savoy, Zach Benson. They're very, very similar players. Put up a ton of points. Excellent skill players, but don't really have the work ethic. And that's something that's got to change. Nonetheless, Catton is a fantastic option at 5th overall for the Montreal Canadiens. And finally, Caden Lindstrom. I think Lindstrom is probably the best case scenario for the Montreal Canadiens going forward. It's a bit of a stretch to say that he's going to fall there. In my latest mock draft, I had Columbus taking Lindstrom, and I think that might be the route they could be going. Columbus is a really stacked defensive core. They're probably going to go offense, and if Demidov's there, they might get him, but if Lindstrom's there too, they're probably going to take him too. And there's no guarantee that Anaheim pulls a rabbit out of the hat and selects Lindstrom too. So there's no guarantee that he's going to fall to 5, but if he does, Montreal is getting a player that they've never really had before. I like a Matt Tkachuk comparison for this guy because he is just mean, tough, punchy in the mouth, but he will find ways to score. I also like an Adam Fantilli comparison, but again, have what you will. Lindstrom is an animal, and he can play center at the next level. Some people are a little bit skeptical about his ability to play center, and some of that comes from his injuries and his physical play. I think his sense can improve. It's not beyond repair. People are a little bit concerned about that, but center, I think he's totally fit to play center at the next level, especially for the Canadiens. My grade for him is an 8.1 out of 10. He's everything that the Montreal Canadiens need wrapped up into one prospect. It doesn't really get a lot simpler than this. If Caden Lindstrom falls to 5, he's going to be a Canadian. That's going to be it for today. The Montreal Canadiens, they always draw a ton of drama towards them during draft time, and this is regardless of whatever GM they have in office. I thought it was just the Bergevin effect, but Kent Hughes, he's getting similar pressure that Bergevin got all those years ago. And again, Montreal's a huge market. They need a winning culture, and soon, because the last time they won a cup, it was the 90s. That's kind of a crazy thought to think of. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to check me out on Spotify or Instagram, I've got a lot of content over there, so don't hesitate to do that. I'll be posting some of these videos to TikTok as well. I've been your host, Link Dansevich, signing off.